I oftentimes, at least weekly, think about your going out pants.
I actually think it raises the draft stock of Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb.
In the playoffs, though, a close game, I trust the coaching of Andy Reid and the play of Patrick Mahomes above the combination of Sean Payton and Bowman.
I will pick, because one of these divisional matchups in the playoffs is going to get someone. I will pick the Commanders in this game.
Anyway, dude, lots have happened in the NFL, which is huge.
Or some could say that nothing ever happens in the NFL. It's always going to be the same. Nothing ever changes.
Yeah, exactly. No, big changes, but first thing I want to talk about, Trey Hendrickson finally got a deal in place that keeps him here. People keep calling it an extension. It's not. He was already on contract for this season. He just got a pay raise.
I like it. $16 million pay raise.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely more towards the market standard for his contract. That's why I'm wearing this jersey. I've been waiting to wear this jersey.
You've been talking about
this whole time. This whole time I've been waiting to wear this jersey during an episode. And now I finally get to. I really like it. Obviously, it's not the deal that you would hope. I think it gives the Bengals a lot of flexibility, though. This is one of those weird situations where in the future, a franchise tag actually makes sense for the player and the team, just because the value of the contract that would be a franchise tag is where Trey Hendrickson would be valued.
Yeah, I think that, well, one, it is interesting that because the jokes that have been made, which are true, is about, the Brown family being broke and not having cash. Yeah. And yet the option that they chose to resolve this was just paying him a bunch of money up front. Which is a little interesting, where this is not some long-term deal where they're staggering it and trying to delay payments. They were just kind of like, okay, fine, and just doubled the amount of money that he's, not fully, but just about.
Yeah, just about. I think that the reason why the Bengals did this, and it really just comes down to understanding the reason why they couldn't get a deal in the first place. The Bengals are, I think, just nervous about Trey Hendrickson 3 years from now. And so, which makes sense. He's up there in age, right? Yeah. And so from their perspective, the guarantees, and this is where I think we might have been a little bit wrong, is, or at least I've been under the assumption that the guarantees that they're paying him, or that they didn't want to pay him, the reason they didn't want to pay him those guarantees was based on the size of the guarantee, where it's seeming like this is more related to they don't want to guarantee him, whatever it would be for a 3-year deal when they don't know what he's going to be like in 3 years. Does that make sense? Because the way that a contract is structured
is objectively a bigger concern. That actually is more of it should be more of a priority for an NFL team than just not paying a guy money.
With Matthew Stafford, when they extended him and they signed him and they gave him a massive guarantee, that's a guarantee of the size of the whole contract. And so, we like to break it down in terms of yearly how much they're making. But if a player signs a massive, $100 million contract and they're guaranteeing half of that, or even 75% of it, you're essentially betting that you're going to get that value over the lifespan of the contract. And in order to sign him, where the Bengals just weren't willing to take that risk, which again makes sense. And so this seems like a good compromise, because then they can guarantee the amount of money that he's getting every year using the data that they collected from the previous year.
Yeah, which when you were talking about the size of the contract and the proportional guarantee to it, I don't know if we want to transition right now, but that's exactly what you do with a player and did end up happening with the player, just not in the way we expected, like Micah Parsons, where
Exactly.
they are giving him 4 years, 188, and 120 of it is fully guaranteed, and
Exactly.
130 of it is guaranteed as long as health is all right with a minimum
Right.
amount of games played, which is a
Exactly. And
massive guarantee.
it's a massive guarantee, and the reason why, he's what, 27 in his prime? Like, yeah, you're willing
26.
to take that. 26 in his prime. You're willing to take that risk. With a player like Trey Hendrickson, that risk isn't as simple. And so Trey Hendrickson wanted more upfront of the entire contract,
Yeah,
where the
everyone seems happy
Bengals,
with this.
right. And, even a reporter even asked Trey Hendrickson about the potential of a franchise tag in the future, and he was not, he didn't necessarily say, was like, yes, let's do it, obviously, but he wasn't necessarily against the idea, because in his mind, as long as he's getting the money of the full contract that he is signing at the moment, he's happy. And like I said, the way that franchise tags works and the way that that tag is determined, um the amount of money that he's going to be getting paid every year that he's tagged would be like what you would expect for a player of his caliber.
Yeah,
So like he's
yes.
making 36 million this year. The franchise tag would be a few million more than that. And so like if the Bengals want to do that, then they can do that and it would be guaranteed.
Yes, perpetually, if the in a hypothetical world, which seems likely, but there's, we never know, where the
Yeah.
franchise tag is what happens next year, he's perpetually going to be making, even as the market increases, money equivalent to being a top 5 to 7 guy at his position,
Yeah.
guaranteed.
Well, and because the franchise tag uses, it's basically you are guaranteed a portion of the highest contract in your position.
Yeah.
And so you'll never exceed the highest contract, which by the way is now Micah Parsons, but it will be close. And so if he's making close to what Micah Parsons made, given like, a 5 million gap, that is totally fair for
Which,
for a player like
what I
Trey
was,
Hendrickson.
another thing to add on to that is the fact that, I don't know when, because you talked about how Trey Hendrickson was asked about his thoughts on franchise tag and seemed hypothetically down for that. The Micah Parsons deal has only made that look more favorable because it blew the market out of
Exactly.
the water by $6 million. So even a
Exactly.
slight decrease from the Micah Parsons being the top of the market is going to be the same amount that the top of the market was prior to the Micah Parsons deal. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
So and so really what this means is that this never was about the, and right before he signed, like that week is when the final reporting came out that said they agree on the time frame, they agree on the size, they don't agree on the guarantees. And
Okay.
so this actually, weirdly enough, is a, surprisingly enough, I guess is the better way of putting it, in terms of the Bengals front office, was a really solid deal. Like this actually worked out pretty well for both parties, and it made it so that this offseason, all of a sudden, spectacular job by the Bengals, right? Like I
Yeah.
truly believe that they did the only other thing, and maybe this was right or wrong, whatever, we'll see how it pans out. I personally was in favor of taking Will Johnson,
Fair.
but right, like maybe adding some more depth to the DB room. We already have a lot of young DBs though, so I understand the reasoning. Plus, our third round pick, which is, it would have been our second or third round where we would have even been able to get him, but specifically our third round pick is kind of cooking in Dylan Fairchild, guard from Georgia. Had an incredible preseason, was one of the best
Okay.
rookie O linemen in the entire league. He was the second highest graded rookie O lineman according to PFF. Um, the guy who was first, I want to say he was like cut by the Rams. Like he like made the snap count, but then he might not have been. But like Dylan Fairchild, either way, regardless, had an incredible preseason. I think he's going to be a great starting left guard. And then they just recently signed Dalton Reisner, Dalton Reisner, which, you know, uh, I don't know if he's going to be a week one starter. I think he should, because our right guard currently, Lucas Patrick, was terrible in the preseason and showed no signs of life. But the point is that they addressed the D line, right? We have Stewart now. We signed Trey Hendrickson. We got all of the guys re-signed that we needed to, and our O line should be like, if we're top, if we're average, I would be like not surprised. Like, we should be average barring injury.
I yes, I think all of a sudden, minus the fact of like in hindsight, could they have gotten it done a couple weeks earlier? Sure. That aside, it seems like a relatively peaceful resolution to the whole ordeal.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um,
Anyway, we can talk about, before we talk about the big one more contract that got done since we last recorded. Terry McLaurin signed. It doesn't really impact my thoughts on the Commanders because I was always assuming that he was going to be extended, but
Same. Yeah.
good on the
I
Commanders.
I think the note there was I think it was pretty clear that anyone who knew anything knew that it was going to happen. It was just going to be a
Yes.
matter of like relative to how these things go, how ugly could it get? Whatever, you define that however it is. It seems it was on the very low end of that quote unquote
Yeah.
ugliness. And
And
I
so,
yeah, I don't expect this to be part of any sort of like if the Commanders struggle at all this season, this would not be part of the narrative, in my opinion.
exactly. And then, so that's two of the major, holdouts, hold ins, major contract disputes that were happening within the last few recent weeks. Both of us thought that the teams that had them currently were going to extend them. Good on us. We were both right. Now let's talk about where we were wrong, because both of us fully expected the Cowboys to sign Micah Parsons. We thought it was the same old Cowboys. Jerry Jones was just doing what he always does. Boy, were we wrong, because
Mhm.
just a few days ago, the report came out that the Packers were kind of leading the way in terms of the trade, potential trade suitor for Micah Parsons. And what do you know? Micah Parsons is now a Packer. Jonathan, what are your initial thoughts? Like, what is the
Uh,
first thing that comes to mind?
I will eat crow on this.
Yeah, me
I
too.
will say, relative to the eating crow metaphor, I would like remove, maybe the beak of the crow, so to speak, or a portion of the crow, because I will say, uh, I did, if there were three options to how this would occur, that being Micah Parsons signed by the Cowboys, Micah Parsons holding out on the Cowboys, or Micah Parsons traded. I did have him getting traded ahead of him holding out.
For sure.
So because I think some people like a trade was hypothetically on the radar, but it kind of just appeared out of nowhere relative to the NFL timetable. There was about a 24-hour period where it kind of like was slowly rising on the radar, and then all of a sudden the news breaks, and it was awesome because I'm watching some of my NFL TV talk shows at live at the time when the news broke, and so watching them get to live react to it all was fun. I think that the weirdest part about this trade, from my perspective, and I'm interested to hear you, because part of the onus of this episode is attempting to finalize our playoff predictions, seeing if anything changed slightly from our previous episode, and then predicting some other parts of how the season will go. I was already
Mhm.
very high on the Cowboys and relatively high on the Cowboys and very high on the Packers. And so
Mhm.
obviously two of them went in completely opposite directions. And yet I'm obviously decent bit lower on the Cowboys now. It didn't really move the needle that much for me on the Packers, where, and we can get into this, I don't now think of them as Super Bowl contenders. I think of them exactly what I thought of them before, which is in a division where the powerhouses of the Lions and the Vikings, in my opinion, get weaker. They should be the favorites for that. that for the
Sure.
AFC or for the NFC North. And I think this solidifies that for me in my prediction. It doesn't move the needle higher to like this is a team that is primed to win a Super Bowl right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So, first off, if you watched last week, or last episode, when we discussed kind of like who we think is going to win each division, when we talked about the NFC North, the Packers were one of those teams where me and Jonathan and I were the farthest apart. The Jonathan had the Packers winning the NFC North. I had them in third place behind the Lions and the Vikings, and we'll get to it later. But I do, this does change things. Um, I think that, yeah, for the Cowboys, it's definitely a problem, right? Like they really don't even have a solution now in terms of the pass rush.
I actually think,
For
so just as a quick note, purely in terms of fantasy football, I actually think it raises the draft stock of Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb because that offense is going to have to score points.
Yeah,
Like that
yeah, I agree.
offense
It's just
will
a question of
probably
like, will
still be
they?
pretty good.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you would expect, you would think so. Um, which we can talk about that later. As far as the Packers, what this did for me, and I wanted to like kind of take a step back. So this week I did a lot of thinking, a lot of researching, kind of looking into the
Soul
Packers.
searching.
Um, exactly. I one could probably take some of the clips of the things that I've said on this podcast and come to the conclusion that I'm a Jordan Love hater, which is not true. But every time I ever talk about Jordan Love, it's always in reaction to people who I think have unnecessarily high standards put on him. What I think about Jordan Love, and the reason why I want to talk about Jordan Love is because um, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. But with this Micah Parsons trade, I think that this elevates, or I guess you could say eliminates, one of the biggest issues with the Packers roster. And so the more that you eliminate issues outside of Jordan Love, the more pressure that is then put on Jordan Love's shoulders in order
True.
to perform. And
Yes.
so here's what I think. Jordan Love is one of the most gifted NFL quarterbacks when it comes to his natural ability. The fact that he can play any sort of high level NFL football at the quarterback position is incredible. The reason why I say that is because naturally his precision and accuracy is incredible. His technique is not that good. And I'm not, who cares about the technique if it's working? I do think that that does limit the Packers ceiling, specifically when they're playing against, contender level teams. The best example I can think of is last year when they played the Eagles in the wild card game, I think it was. Jordan Love threw 3 interceptions, and that offense was not able to get anything going. And if I remember correctly, after the half, they were only down by a touchdown. I believe the score was 10-3, where it's like they were in that game purely through just LaFleur. Like again, LaFleur as a head coach, I think provides a floor, which is ironic, no pun intended. But I just think that that's really what, weirdly enough, this trade really just puts a lot of pressure on Jordan Love. Um,
I don't even think you need to add the qualifier of it being weird because it's just a fact. When a quarterback who we believe should be a franchise level quarterback, if not even higher, and that is under question, and a team makes a big move like this that definitively improves the overall talent of your roster, more pressure will be put on the quarterback as a result of that. So even as someone who in our past discussions has been higher on Jordan Love, I'm not going to hold any punches if he falls short.
yeah. And so like Jordan Love is just, again, incredibly gifted athlete. He just has a lot of bad habits. He struggles, right? And it's gotten a little bit better throughout his career, but he's struggled with accuracy. And again, it's one of those things where it's like in college you have all of these quarterbacks, right, that are all physically gifted and can sling the ball like like a D1 college football player. But in order to
Yeah,
make it within the NFL, the margin for where the ball needs to be placed is not that much, but it makes a huge impact. And so obviously he hasn't had the most help when it comes to his wide receivers, but I also think that that's like a give and take relationship where we also can assign some of the, I guess you could say blame. I feel like that's even a bit harsh, but some of the blame on Jordan Love for not putting the ball where it needs to be. And it's like you as a quarterback do have the responsibility, of putting the ball in a window that's this big, because that's just what the expectation is for any franchise quarterback within the NFL, and Jordan Love struggles to do that consistently. That being said, if he can figure it out, this is a contender. This is a team that if they win the
sure.
if they win the Super Bowl next year, I wouldn't really be entirely shocked, because what it would mean in my mind is that Jordan Love took a step that I would expect a franchise player to make, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where when you say, like, if they win the Super Bowl, it's not going to be because they were some, like, 10-7 team that slipped into the wild card and then went on a run. Like, the signs would be there throughout the season. Like, in
Exactly.
a situation where the Packers are contenders, it's because they were competitive and probably won the NFC North this season. It's not
Yes.
like this is a
100%.
team where we're going to know who they are, not like after week one, but about halfway into the season, post their bye week, which I don't know off the top of my head. We're going to know whether this team has the ability to actually be a Super Bowl contender. And the last thing we'll say on this before we start talking about our playoff predictions and our awards predictions for this season is I want to somewhat tamper how negative the trade analysis has been from Dallas's perspective, because let's be clear, a lot of those grades are not actually grades of the actual trade that occurred, but the context of losing a franchise defensive player. Because some people look at this situation, I know what you're thinking, but hear me out here. Some people are looking at this situation and going, oh, you only got two first round picks, and to be clear, a 3-time defensive Pro Bowler in Kenny Clark. Like, Kenny Clark is an above average lineman, to be clear. The problem is that trades are not made for players in the vacuum of, oh, it's this player for this. Context matters. And so it is not as if the Cowboys were trading a player who had the massive like Micah Parsons. It wasn't a sign and trade. Like, they didn't sign the contract for him and then trade him when he was in the middle or the first year of that. So you have to also keep into context that the Cowboys were trading him and now also don't have to pay him. Like, they are keeping $46 million a year off of their books as well by doing this. I'm not saying that the Cowboys by any means won this trade, let's be clear. My point is that some, like, you see a player like Micah Parsons getting traded and be like, okay, 2 firsts and Kenny Clark, that's not terrible return, but this is Micah Parsons. You do also have to factor in that the Cowboys are not tying themselves to one person as a franchise cornerstone. And that's the ultimate deciding factor here. The
So
question
here
about how we look back in hindsight at this trade is not necessarily even going to be determined by the returns of the draft pick or Kenny Clark, but what Micah Parsons actually does under the next 4 years of this new contract.
I agree with you in principle, where it's like there is a certain level of context that needs to be placed on how we view this from the Cowboys' perspective. I think that if the reason why the Cowboys did traded him is because they simply could not afford the money to pay this guy that much money, then they still made a huge mistake by waiting so long to trade him. Because the
Fair.
longer
That's
that they waited,
objectively true.
the less that they can get in return. There are many packages of way less, significantly like less impactful players than Micah Parsons, where teams got, 3 first round picks in a second. And so the actual trade, no, like the value that they got from Micah Parsons was not even close in terms of what they should have been able to get and what I think teams would have been willing to give up if they would have traded him earlier. The problem
Yeah.
is that if it is a situation where they were simply not able to pay him that much and they had no choice, you could say, well, like that's just the way it is, right? The problem with that scenario is that they knew that 5 months ago. And you know what else we
Yeah.
knew 5 months ago? That Micah Parsons wanted to reset the market.
Well,
And
and here's
so,
the thing. The context is important because Jerry Jones has said definitively that they were willing to and offered him at the beginning of the offseason a a contract that would technically be the biggest. It's just that clearly Micah was wanting to blow the water,
yes.
blow the market out of the water.
And they knew
Um,
that at the beginning of the offseason.
yes.
See, that's my point, is that what they did was they basically held on to this idea and this belief that Micah Parsons was willing to take less than he originally stated.
Mhm.
That's the
Another
only
wrinkle,
logical explanation. The only
another
other
slight wrinkle in
alternative,
this.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the only other alternative is that they could pay him and they just didn't want to.
Well, I think, to be clear, that's when I was saying didn't want to put that on the books. I think that's the case. Like, obviously, they did actually have the money and would have the money to pay him and spread it out across the books. It's the two things. It's there's just a problem in general with paying three different players who are typically the three highest earning position groups: quarterback, wide receiver, and edge rusher. And if they had signed Micah Parsons, they would be paying all three of those positions at the very top, or in CeeDee Lamb's case, just dang near the top of the market.
Yeah.
And so that is a hard thing to say. I will say one funny wrinkle that I saw that I wasn't even thinking about is that when you actually factor, because Texas does not have state tax. So when you
Hmm.
actually factor in Micah Parsons' contract, he's actually going to be, with taxes, making just about the same amount as he would have if he was making like just market resetting, but not $6
Yeah.
million above the market. Like, so by like a
That's
$41
actually
million
interesting.
a
Yeah.
year Dallas contract is about the same as a $46
Yeah.
million a year Wisconsin
Wisconsin. Yeah,
contract.
that
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense.
which
That
is
is
kind
interesting.
of funny.
Basically, though, what I'm saying is that I still think that the Cowboys messed up. That this was a huge
Oh,
mistake.
yes.
That this whole entire situation was a mess up because either they knew that they couldn't pay it, or maybe by principle, like you talked about, they knew that they weren't going to pay it, or they actually held on to this belief that Micah Parsons was willing to take a pay cut. And if you believed that as a front office, then you're stupid and gullible. If you don't believe that and you think that you're able to, and you already know that he's not going to be signed, then you're stupid because you didn't trade him when he was at max value. So basically what I'm saying is that there's really only two situations. Both of them make the Cowboys look stupid.
Yes, and I will say, and we were talking about this a little bit off of the podcast, and it's an NFL podcast. We won't get into the super specifics of the NBA, but what's interesting about this, because I saw some people comparing this, because it's clickbait
Yeah.
and people like to be hyperbolic, comparing it to the Luka trade. Obviously, they're also both Dallas teams. The
Which is
interesting
just sad
difference is,
for them.
yes, it is. Poor Dallas fans. The Luka Doncic trade by the Dallas Mavericks was objectively way stupider than this
Way
trade.
stupider. Way stupider.
But there was objectively a coherent vision behind it.
Yes.
What's funnier about this and makes it in some emotional senses, not really, but like worse in some capacity, is that this is not nearly as bad as the Luka trade, but there was no vision. This was
No.
entirely reactionary by Jerry Jones,
Yes.
and any attempt that he makes to spin it as not is a lie. And so
Because
that's what makes it
because
harder to swallow.
if it wasn't reactionary, then they would have traded him 4 months ago.
They would have traded him before the draft and gotten guaranteed at least
100%.
another, like, they would have at least gotten 3 first round picks, you know, a 26, 27, and the first round pick of this most recent
Yes,
draft.
100%. And so again,
So,
that's
yeah.
why it's like either they had the foresight that they could or would be willing to pay him, or they didn't. And either way, that's dumb because they should have. And I think they
Yeah.
did. I just don't I just think that I just think Jerry Jones was stubborn. I think that, that he could do what he's did this whole time. With, same with Dak Prescott, same with CeeDee Lamb, everything. And so it just didn't work out. The one thing I will say, the last thing I'll say about this whole situation, and this is from the back to the team that won the trade. I guess to end on a more positive note, with this, and there's really two things I want to say. The first one is that both of us, and you specifically, I think brought it up first, have said that if you are an NFL franchise and you're starting from the beginning, the three things that you want is a franchise quarterback, a dynamic head coach, and a um an incredible edge rusher. Like those are the three things that you want down that you can
3 most
solidify
important
for
things.
your future. That's exactly what the Packers did. I feel like they went from 1.5, meaning LaFleur being 1 and Jordan Love being half, like he's almost there, but he quite hasn't taken that step yet, to now 2.5, where they have two of those things down. If they can get that one last thing, that's why I think like in the future, they're definitely, I would stake a claim in the Packers and their long-term stock.
No, I
Even if
mean,
it's not this season.
even if it didn't change a massive amount of my Packers opinions on this specific season, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to it. I've never felt better about buying Packers stock like a week before this. Like I bought Packers stock at the
You really did.
perfect time.
You really did. Yeah, my long-term view of the Packers has dramatically changed.
Yeah.
Um the final thing I'll say, which is cool, is if you think about it, now the Packers defensively have the potential to have a top 5 player at their respective position at every level of their defense, right?
Yeah.
Xavier McKinney in the secondary, right? Arguably, definitely a top 5 safety last year, arguably top 3. Edrin Cooper, who last year ended the season like a top 3 linebacker, and if he can continue
Yeah.
that into his second year, again, 100% has a potential to be a top 5 linebacker next year. And then obviously Micah Parsons. And having that amount of talent spread out across the defense, that's impactful.
It's
And that's
special.
why I'm saying if they turn out to be this team that just like runs through the NFC and ends up winning the Super Bowl, I wouldn't be entirely shocked. Because
No.
they have the defense, they have the head coach, they have all of the talent that you would want. If Jordan Love can take steps and Matthew Golden is who I think he is, this is a scary team.
This doesn't have to be a team that is like the 2011 Packers where they literally scored 35 points per game in order to make their Super Bowl run. Like that's not anywhere close to this. Like if the Packers average like 24 points a game, they're competitive to get the 1 seed
Yeah,
potentially.
literally.
And
Literally.
so we will transition because we've been talking about a lot of the NFC for the last 15 minutes. We'll quickly finalize our AFC playoff predictions. Adam, I don't know if you have it up top. What were your predictions at the end of last episode?
Yeah, so at the end of last episode, I had the Ravens at 1, the Bills at 2, Chiefs at 3, and then I had the Texans at 4. I had the Broncos at 5, the Bengals at 6, and the Chargers at 7. With the Trey Hendrickson signing and Dalton Reisner. The only thing I switched up for the AFC, given this new data, is I moved the Bengals ahead of the Broncos. So now I have the Bengals at 5, Broncos at 6.
Okay. I had the Ravens 1, Bills 2, same as you. Then the Chiefs and the Texans, identical division winners. And then I had Chargers, Bengals, Patriots. Uh, the one that I am the most emphatic about because of the combination of uh it's a it's actually really more so slightly going down on the Chargers. I'm switching 5 and 6 Chargers Bengals. The Rashawn Slater injury, some people are talking about it like it's a season dooming injury. I have enough faith in Harbaugh, O-line coaching, competitive culture that I think that's a bit reactionary. It's not good, though, to put it mildly. It's not enough for me, and I'm still, of the AFC West teams competing to get into the wild card behind the Chiefs, I still do believe in the Chargers more than the Broncos, which I know is probably our biggest disagreement last
Yeah, it
week.
just doesn't make any sense to me, but continue.
Fair. But moved the Chargers down, and then with the Trey Hendrickson, the vibes being better, I think if the Bengals schedule to start the season, we've said this in years past, but it is a recipe for them to be able to break their curse of starting the
Yeah.
season sluggishly. I think I'm confident putting the Bengals there. I did toy this week with, I did a bit of soul searching on the Bills because you know, I'm a known Bills hater, but that's not because I don't respect their ability to be a great regular season team. Take that as a backhanded compliment, which it is.
Yeah.
But I was mainly soul searching in my belief in James Cook because last season, like, I really bought James Cook mainly just because in the 2 games that I watched, one in person, James Cook just objectively scared me. It's why when we did our running backs rankings, I put him into my top 10 running backs because he is legitimately, he just has that weird bit of X factor. But I also took a look at, one, how replicable will that offense be from last season? And two, that defense didn't really improve, and
Nope.
if anything, could regress. And so I am switching my Chiefs and Bills. I am putting the Chiefs at the 2 seed and the Bills at the 3 seed. You can laugh, but I've been solidly this whole offseason being like, yeah, regular season, Ravens, Bills, Chiefs will obviously win the AFC West. I'm not predicting that like even in that built in, I wasn't like, oh, the Chiefs are going to go like 12-5 or lower than that.
Yeah.
But I also
No, I
did
think that's fair.
part of it was also that when I've been thinking about the Kansas City Chiefs, I had been baking in that they were going to lose Rashee Rice in the middle of the season,
And now the
which
news
I
came out. Yeah.
liked, and which I very much disliked
Yeah.
for interrupting cohesion. Whereas now, Rashee Rice, although even though the games that he got suspended actually increased than what most people were assuming, which it was going to be probably 4, maybe 5, it was a full 6, which, like, he
Fair.
did a very bad thing.
Yeah,
Like,
that
I'm not
seems
like
reasonable to me.
I'm just saying purely based off of what
Yeah,
all
no,
the
off the
NFL
reports.
analysts and the
Well,
precedent.
that's what just to clarify, the NFL is terrible at handing out suspensions. Just makes no sense. Like, I'll never
Yeah.
forget when Calvin Ridley was suspended an entire season for making a bet. And meanwhile, Mr. Nasty Man on the Browns was suspended 11 games. Like, they're terrible at it. There's no sense of
He
justice
got
within the NFL.
he got less than half the amount of games suspended as there were accusers.
Literally.
That's not even like
Literally.
that's not even a joke.
That's real. Real. Oh my gosh.
So yes, you are right. That being said, though, I much purely from a momentum looking
Yeah.
purely at the football, not at the ethics of it. It is better for the Chiefs and Rushy Rice that instead of him middle of the season just having to disappear, that it's like he's gone to the start and then he gets a clean ramp up into the playoffs and throughout the
Yeah.
rest of the season. So I felt just good enough to swap the two of them. But
Yeah,
that's my
no,
AFC.
totally makes sense. I was laughing, but I am totally like that makes a lot of sense. I would not be
Mhm.
shocked if that were true. Okay, so in that case, let's start off. I'm going to start off with the first wild card game that I see on my bracket. Um, the let's do the 3-6 matchup with for me is Chiefs at 3, Broncos at 6. Um, for this one, again, I'm very high on the Broncos. I still have the Chiefs winning. Um, I'm a big proponent of not letting, just a quarterback matchup blind my prediction. In the playoffs, though, a close game, I trust the coaching of Andy Reid and the play of Patrick Mahomes above the combination of Sean Payton and Bo Nix. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I do.
I think
Obviously,
that, I mean,
that's not
like,
the matchup that I have. But if that were the case,
it,
I
it,
will say I don't like. I'm a big fear factor both when it affects my teams and just in general of
divisional matchups in the
the
playoffs.
divisional matchups
Yeah,
in the playoffs
me too.
fearful for the team that is quote unquote better. I don't like
Right.
that.
No, for sure. For sure. I'm with you there. But and it's funny because I actually do believe that that the Chiefs and the Broncos have like similar rosters. Like right now if I ranked them, like I might even put the Broncos ahead of them just from a roster perspective.
I
But
would still, and this
in
is
terms of
faint praise for
matchup,
the Chiefs because they're still not good. I would still take the Chiefs' weapons over the Broncos, but
sure.
defense, yeah, I'll give that to you.
Right. And so all I'm saying is like again, I'm still very high on the Broncos, but I'm going with the Chiefs. I think that's
My
kind of a no-brainer.
3-6, yeah, my 3-6 matchup in this hypothetical predictions that we've made that will probably turn out terribly wrong. Let's just be clear. Let's get in front of
Absolutely.
that. Is now that it's swapped, Bills Chargers. Um, I pretty favorably take the Bills here.
Yeah.
I think that the Los Angeles Chargers going on the road in January to Orchard Park, it's hard for me to imagine a world in which the Bills don't walk away from that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Okay, my next matchup, the 2-7 matchup. I actually have Bills Chargers, and I agree for all the same reasons. Bills.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. It's worth noting that, and I will keep this rant brief. I hate the 7 seed edition and the 1 seed getting the bye. Not a big fan of the 7 seed as a concept. I get why it happened. It was always going to happen. More playoff games. There's
Yeah.
only one. There's not been a single close 2-7 matchup in the history of its existence. Which is funny because there has been exactly one upset, which was the Packers versus the
The Cowboys.
Cowboys. The problem is that game wasn't even a good game. It was just that the upset was a blowout. So there
Yeah.
literally has not been a single one score game in the history of the 2-7 matchup, I believe.
Yeah. Which can I just say real quick? You don't have to believe me, but the writing was on the wall for that upset. The writing was
Fair.
100% on the wall. The Packers were on the upswing. Jordan Love, that was like, his first real season as a starter, was tearing it up at the end of the season.
Yeah,
And it wasn't surprising necessarily that Jordan Love against that defense was able to put up so many points, but I digress.
not wrong. My 2-7 matchup now has been created, the Chiefs Patriots. The Chiefs get to beat up on a Patriots
The
team that
fairy
will be
tale playoff
severely.
run
The fairy tale
has
playoff
come to an
run
end.
begins with this. I the unfortunate thing about my predictions switching around, and because it actually created a dream scenario at the end of the last week, where in order to reach the Super Bowl, Mahomes would get to beat Burrow, Josh Allen, then Lamar Jackson. Like that was on the table with the way the seating was set up, which would have been
Yeah.
beautiful. But I'm not going to create my predictions based off of my wet dreams. So,
Whoa!
you know,
That was
when I put
crazy.
my head to my pillow at night, that is what I fantasize about, is him beating all three of the rest of the big four quarterbacks in the NFL consecutively in a playoff run. That will not be the case. The Chiefs will be the Patriots.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, my last matchup is the 4-5 matchup: Texans Bengals. Texans Bengals. I'm taking the Bengals.
Okay.
Um, I so this is one of those situations where, again, I'm
I
not a
said
big
that.
proponent.
I actually kind of agree with you. I
No,
see
yeah,
the
I
vision.
feel like this is pretty clear personally. It's one of those things where it's like if the Texans' strength is their defense, but the Bengals have an offense that it doesn't matter the defense, like there you go. Like it's really as simple as that, where it's like if the and that is how, by the way, this concept is why the Bengals would even be in this situation in the first place, where it's like, yeah, obviously the Bengals defense is bad. I think that any team will be able to create pressure against CJ Stroud for number one with how I project the offensive line of the Texans to be.
Yep.
I don't actually think that this would be a close game. Um, One, you have to take into account the historical success of Joe Burrow and just the Bengals as a whole elevating within the playoffs. Um, then the second thing that you have to take into account is again the fact that yeah, the Texans could have a top five defense and the Bengals could still put 40 on their head. like, like
Yep.
it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, your defense could be incredible, but the combination of, assuming the Bengals get here, a competent, maybe above average offensive line, Chase Brown, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, uh, Joe Burrow combination, like you can't, there's not going to be a lot of teams that really stand a chance to stop that, especially in a situation like this where Joe Burrow can seemingly turn it on, like he does and like he has. And so for me, this is a pretty simple matchup.
Um, I have the identical matchup at the 4-5. I'm not predicting it as strongly as you are. I still would lean Bengals for exactly all of the reasons that you just said, where it's like the strengths and the weaknesses of this matchup actually pair up pretty well for
Yeah.
the Bengals. The only factor that comes to mind, which I don't even agree with, but it would be the Bengals' first time in the playoffs in 3 years. You're wondering about that. Like, does
I
that have a
guess
mental effect? But I
the
mean,
last
it's
time we
Joe
made it to the
Cool.
Super Bowl, it was like 20 plus years since we made the playoff or since we, made it there. So it's like,
Yeah, I believe in Joe Cool.
like it's Joe Burrow, dude. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no. Um, Okay,
Okay.
so then if that's your matchup, the last one, so I guess we can go on to the divisional round. So this is where I have the Bills Chiefs, right? The 2-3 seed in the divisional round. What's interesting about this is that in my scenario, this is in Orchard Park.
Where the
Uh,
Chiefs have won.
I understand. Here's the thing. The logic that I would use, which I think is very good logic and probably the best logic one could use when making these predictions, is that the Chiefs historically have owned the Bills in the playoffs, that Patrick Mahomes is a better clutch player, that the Chiefs have a better defense, and that the Chiefs have better coaching. Here's the
Yes.
thing, though. If I'm going to use that logic, then why even do this? Because then it's just
Oh,
like,
okay.
okay, yeah,
I
who
respect that.
cares? Like
In
it's one
an
of those things where it's like, yeah, they are a dynasty.
esoteric football discussion sense, I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, they're a dynasty. They're probably the safe pick on every matchup in the playoffs. But like
Yeah.
purely for the sake of like me having fun predicting this, I just kind of want to stop it, right? Like I'm going to predict the Bills. I think it's going to be a close game. This is not me saying like strongly that the Bills are going to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs because everything says otherwise. You know, like obviously the arguments for the Bills would be, right, they've always kept it close. They've always been able to kind of it come down to the last drive, and the Chiefs, you know, simply can't keep getting away with this, right? Like if you're going to predict the Bills to win a Super Bowl, like this is the year, especially historically. It might even be too late for them with this pairing with Josh Allen and Sean McDermott. But like, so I'm not saying it's unreasonable to pick the Bills, but basically what I'm getting at is that my true beliefs about this matchup is I would pick the Chiefs, right? Like if the gun was to my head, I would pick the Chiefs. I'm for this episode picking the Bills because if I were to use that logic of coaching and historical precedent, then like again, who cares about the NFC? Who cares about the rest of the AFC? Like the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl because they've been to the Super Bowl so many times in a row. You know what I mean? Like, and what's the
Yeah.
fun of that? You know what I mean?
No, I entirely get what you're saying.
Like, for the
I will
principle of the matter is that I won't predict the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl because it would be too easy.
entirely fair, and I respect that. I will quote a passage of Dylan Thomas, the great poet. Grave men near death, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors, rage, rage against the dying of the light. And that's all that any team, but particularly the Buffalo Bills, can do when they play the Kansas City Chiefs. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. There
Oh
is
my
an
gosh.
inevitability to a dynasty, but particularly in the Chiefs Bills playoff matchups. There has
Yeah.
never been a team or a quarterback versus quarterback matchup that is 4-0 against another team. And here's the thing, you're thinking, well, of course, you could use all sorts of logic to say the other way. Many people would pick the logic of, well, they're due. Or
Yeah.
the logic of what you said, which is also respectable, which is it's simply not fun to pick the Chiefs because it's easy. It's a cop out. But no, Adam, this is not an easy pick for me. In fact, I'm going against the grain by predicting that the Chiefs will win this game. In my scenario, they are at home. But the problem is that the Chiefs are the ones defying history here. And the
Okay.
Bills can fight against that. But no one has ever done what the Chiefs are pursuing to do, to be the greatest dynasty in NFL history and to dominate a team that has already been dominated unlike any other team in NFL history. And so I think that I'm actually going against the grain by saying that the Chiefs will beat the Bills in the playoff for the 5th time in 6 years.
Maybe you're going against the grain of like society, but not like reality. Like it's not like you're like making this like it's not like you're breaking ground here. Like anyone in their right mind should pick the Chiefs in this matchup.
But here's the thing. It's a fool that looks for logic in the chambers of the human heart, Adam. You know, people are still
Just freaking all right.
I like to wax eloquent when I talk
Mm.
about the Chiefs dynasty,
Yeah.
but particularly their dominance against the Bills because it is so beautiful. It should be cherished, and it won't be because typically the world hates what is right and is good. And in this instance, the Chiefs are what is right and good, and yet they will prey upon their downfall. And yet the Chiefs will do it once again.
Okay. I'm like my reaction to that is yeah, duh. Like Like you're not doing anything. Like you're trying to like spin this to
You're
sound like
ruining
you're
my
some
moment.
profound like prophet predicting what's to come. And it's like, no, like you're just predicting what has happened for the past 4 years. Good on you, Jonathan. And like, again, it's different because it's your team, right? Like, I don't expect you not to pick the Chiefs because they're your team. But as someone outside trying to add some variety to this,
Yeah,
it's really as simple as that. Like, I'm just not going to limit my bracket
that's fair.
by picking the
That's fair.
dynasty.
And I respect that. We're approaching this from two completely different perspectives, and God bless you for it. And that's what football's all about.
Yeah, exactly. Yours is just like a boring, lame perspective, and mine is a fun, what could be perspective.
You didn't like the Dylan Thomas passage? Come
It
on.
was cool and it was funny. It was good. It was good. Um, I just, you just kind of came across as a little bit of a prick, but other than that,
That's my goal. That's always my goal
I
in
know it
life.
is. I know it is. Okay, my next matchup for the divisional round is Ravens Bengals. This one
Same
is
here.
tough. Um, I kind of go back and forth, honestly, right? Where I'm trying not to let my bias get in the way. The historical precedent is on the Bengals side, I think, when it comes to just Joe Burrow and his ability to rise, and really the Bengals as a whole,
And what we talked
their
about with the
ability to
third time
rise.
meeting of a
Hmm.
divisional matchup.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, the Ravens, I think, have the better roster. There's another aspect where I think about, um, where I think about like kind of what the logic I use with the Texans, where it's like, no matter what, the Bengals are going to be able to score a lot of points. I think for the sake of my prediction, which I hate, I don't know, man. I'm just nervous that why don't you choose first?
For me, it's it would be pretty simple, except for the fact that I'm not a Lamar hater. I'm far from it. I'm a Lamar lover. I love Lamar
Yeah.
Jackson, played for the University of Louisville. But I am a football realist, and I acknowledge the reality of no matter how much you try and get your way around it or turn it into like, and the discussion around Lamar can range from like making it about like societal issues to like football analysis. Like it gets out of hand. Like
It does.
this is football, people. It's like, come on. Lamar has struggled in the playoffs.
Yeah,
He
it's as simple
he
as
has
that.
performed poorly. Like he has had uh th- really only two games where he has from start to finish played like the Lamar Jackson that we know. And even just like an average Lamar-esque game. I would still pick the Ravens because I believe that, oh boy, is Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry a scary combo.
Yeah.
And I do think that the Ravens have a solid enough defense where they can prevent the Bengals from scoring. Like, I don't. I actually envision this like if the Bengals win, I know this sounds weird, I envision it being more like a 24-21 game than some shootout.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Lamar really struggles, but that Ravens defense is good enough to
Here's one of sorry, go ahead.
the way that the Bengals would win this is if Lamar struggles once again, turns the ball over a couple of times, and Joe Burrow makes enough plays in the moment, leads a game-winning field goal drive, walk-off field goal. Like I don't actually envision the Bengals' path to winning a hypothetical playoff matchup to be like some 41-38 game. And I know those types of games have occurred between these two teams in the regular season. I don't see that happening in Baltimore in January playoff football. That doesn't like I don't actually see that
So
type of game occurring.
here's I've kind of collected my thoughts. I think that picking the Ravens is totally reasonable. The thing with this matchup, and the points that really come to mind is
You would also, just real quick to add one other factor in to maybe even make it easier for you to go with your heart and your team is the Bengals would be coming off a bye week. Like they would be, like it's the classic,
no, the
right?
Ravens
This
would
is
be.
that's or sorry, I meant the Ravens. Like the
Yeah,
Ravens would be
yeah,
coming off of, and I'm someone who does, unless it is like
yeah,
a dynastic team, like I don't really love bye weeks as much as other people.
yeah. I'm with you there. So here's my thoughts. I think that right when it comes to just like roster for roster, I think that the Ravens have more pieces. When it comes to offense, I think the Bengals are going to have a just a more dynamic offense, um, specifically related to the pass. It's one of those things where it's like it's believe it weirdly enough, if I were to predict, and this is kind of going against what you said, the last year the Ravens but won both matchups. One was in overtime and one was by a field goal. The first game, the reason, and at both games, the reason we lost is because we missed field goals where we were
True.
going to win the game if we would have made like a 40-yard field goal, and both times we missed. So both games, it was a, crazy shootout, and the Bengals just barely missed the mark. If the
Fair.
Bengals If this matchup happens and the Bengals win, I would predict a blowout. The reason why I'm saying that is because the way that I would predict this game to go is that from the beginning, the Bengals offense, they come out hot, they come out quick, they come out fast. The Ravens, maybe they have some hiccups, right? We see some of and the one thing that's definitely true is that even if in games where Lamar Jackson played good in the playoffs, except for, matchups where like they're heavily favored and just like way better. But in like
Yeah.
specifically the Bills last year, he starts rough and then gets better towards the end. What I would predict is basically where the Bengals kind of put it away at halftime. And now, the Ravens just don't have enough, because like if there's a weakness of that Ravens teams, it's their weapons, right? It's their firepower. And where they just
And
don't have enough firepower and weapons to like make that comeback. Where when the Ravens win, I predict it to be more of a shootout. Neither defense can really do anything. And um it's a situation where like coaching pays off in the end.
yeah, I think I'm still picking the Ravens, but I will say there's also just and again, this would be the first time in 3 years that they would have made the playoffs. So there's a bit of a gap, but historically, Joe Burrow has shown no problem going on the road, beat the Bills in Orchard Park, beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead.
No.
So
The
I'm not even necessarily
yeah.
factoring, like I would be factoring in just the weather of Baltimore more than like the actual
Yeah.
road environment.
Yeah. Yeah. If anything, like he might play better. Like honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically all of that to be said, this is not an easy matchup for me. And this is not something that's like easy to predict. I am gonna go the Bengals though, just because I'm a Bengals fan. Like I will be open when I admit that because it's so close, I am going with my favorite team.
Fair.
And that's that. It's really
The
as simple as
AFC
that. Like if
Championship.
it's gonna, it's one thing if it's like a blowout and I'm just like blindly picking my team, but I feel like this is a reasonable matchup, right? It's divisional. There's enough factors that an upset could occur, so I'm gonna predict it.
Hmm.
Okay,
The
so then
AFC
your AFC
Championship
matchup,
game.
championship.
The Kansas City Chiefs would be going to Baltimore to play the Ravens.
Remember last time that happened?
Remember the last time that happened? Do you want to go ahead and talk about your game?
Sure. I can be really I can be really quick. So this is a situation. I have the Bengals Bills in the AFC Championship. Um, Obviously, it's one of those things where weirdly enough, I think that the Ravens have a better team than the Bills specifically, but I think that this is where I'm saying that the Bengals fairy tale run for this season comes to an end. That might be shocking, but I don't know. There's a part of me that says like if built into my predictions is that the Bills finally beat the Chiefs, that there would just be enough momentum for them to lose and like imagine how sad that would be for them to
At
beat
the
the
same
Chiefs in
time,
the
at the same,
divisional round.
I would find that hilarious.
It
I
would be
actually
really
think
funny.
that you could make the argument that that
You
could
could.
be bad for the Bills because that was their Super Bowl.
That was like basically, yeah. Yeah, they're coming
And
off
so
a
there's an
on a downer.
emotional letdown, but fair enough. In this world that you're envisioning, it's the Bills, it's Josh Allen's year, it's hypothetical fairy tale land.
Yeah, exactly. And so,
I'm messing with you. It's
yeah,
not an
no.
unreasonable pick.
It 100% isn't an unreasonable pick. So this round, I'm going with the Bills. Again, obviously, it's one of those things where it's like the Bengals, I think, have proven, and Joe Burrow specifically, has proven himself enough that in any playoff matchup, no matter what, it's not unreasonable to think that they would win. Right? It's one of those things where it's like every single year that Joe Burrow is healthy and playing, the Bengals could win the Super Bowl. And I truly believe that. They make it to the playoffs. It doesn't, I like their defense can suck. I still think it's reasonable. Joe
Yeah.
Burrow won a playoff game against the number one seeded Titans while getting sacked 8 times.
Yeah.
He was down, what, 21 points in Arrowhead in the AFC Championship in the first, it might have been 14 points in the championship in Arrowhead and came back and won the game.
Yeah.
There's always a chance. I'm I think that the way that the Bengals are operating, looking at this offseason, they have a really bright future. I think that at some point I would be shocked if they don't win a Super Bowl with Joe Burrow, but I think that this is Josh Allen's time.
Okay. In the AFC Championship rematch from 2 years ago, Lamar versus Mahomes, um, I'm really struggling with this
Mhm.
because the Chiefs are guaranteed to make the AFC Championship with Mahomes. That is the entirety of his history with the team. It
Yes.
would be foolish to predict otherwise. Uh, but there's no guarantee that they make Super Bowls.
Yeah.
There isn't. In fact, the
Because
last time
that
that
two
they
times.
yeah,
That those
and
two
the last
times
time they
happens.
lost a Super Bowl, they did in fact make it back to the AFC Championship game only to lose. I would predict if this matchup were to occur, an AFC Championship game in Baltimore, Ravens versus Chiefs, there's heart and there's head. And my head tells me that the Baltimore Ravens would win. There's a multitude of factors, but I think it's just the simple idea that you can't make the Super Bowl every year. To make four
Yeah.
in a row, it's only been done by a team that lost all four of them.
The Bills, they just keep getting flack, dude. No matter what. They just keep getting hate.
Um, I I will say that the Baltimore Ravens will make the Super Bowl.
I'm so glad you did that.
I think that, and I'll be pleasantly surprised, and this is where I want to set my expectations where they can be broken, not met by doing this, or exceeded, I should say. But
Yeah.
I think that it's really difficult to beat a team that is talented as the Ravens are. And I think that this is a situation where the overall talent and the personnel of that roster, uh, makes it to where I would pick the Ravens if I were not tampered by this, and I'm forcing myself to not be blinded by my Chiefs love. I have the Ravens making the Super Bowl.
Okay. I love it. I love it. Yeah, and just to clarify, that's exactly where I'm at with the Bengals, where it's like if they can go far, right? Like That's pretty special, but also I like it because I feel like both of us kind of like just accepted our bias and used it to make the bracket. But then on the same note, like the overarching, like the end result was really like who we, you know what I mean, was more about like
Yeah.
more as an analytical choice, you could say. There's a nice mix,
Because
is what I'm
here's
saying.
the thing, I do actually think that um it's a really close one. I do actually think that Lamar Jackson is the second best quarterback in the NFL. I really do
Yeah,
think completely different styles. It's only a comparison in
I
terms
think
of
that's fair.
legacy and history. He's the modern day Peyton Manning.
Yeah,
And at
absolutely.
but like he has the two MVPs. He's a guaranteed first ballot Hall of Famer. At some point, he will beat the guy in
You
his
you
conference.
you have to
Like
think so, right? Like, yeah.
like that is what happens at a certain point. Like it's almost one of those things where it's like I know this sounds biased, but it's like if it doesn't happen, then like at what point does Mahomes legitimately just become the GOAT?
Mm,
Like in terms of like dominating a conference that has
yeah.
all of the other three best quarterbacks in, and he's letting no one else through, with the exception of Joe Burrow one season. Like at a certain point, like if he just continually gatekeeps the conference for a decade, how do you even react to that?
Well, I mean, like basically what you're saying is like if he makes the Super Bowl like 10 years in a row.
Yes, but that's the thing where it's like, that's my point where I'm like, that can't actually happen. And
Yeah,
so
no,
it
right. I'm with
won't
you there.
this year. That's my point is
Yes. Yes,
like
I'm
if
right there with
Mahomes
you.
makes another Super Bowl, it's like the gap only gets closer and closer and
Right.
closer between the
Well, and
two.
so that's why, and just to like clarify, that's one of the reasons why I said before, like I do believe that at some point Joe Burrow is going to win a Super Bowl. Um I pray that in the 2022 Super Bowl wasn't his only chance, right? That like there will be another situation and I it's going to be if they make the Super Bowl, I, I would almost guarantee that they would win just because of the type of player that Joe Burrow is. I think that chances are that of the three guys in their conference, one, two of the three being Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Josh Allen, will win a Super Bowl at some point in their career,
I'm not willing
at
to
the
go
very
that
least.
far, but what I will say is that and it's reflected in my prediction, Lamar, even though he has had more playoff struggles than any of the other guys, is
Hmm.
actually the leading candidate for me to break
Yeah,
through that glass ceiling.
yeah. Which for
But
me, I
that's
think I would actually put him third just because of the playoff struggles. But like, it's one of
fair.
those things. And again, when we talk about like ranking quarterbacks and specifically these four guys, I'm never going to like heavily disagree. Like, maybe I'll disagree with you, but like not in any way that makes me like want to like do anything about it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, okay.
Commit an
Like,
act.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. Like it is totally if you believe that Lamar Jackson is the second best quarterback in the NFL, good on you. And I think that's a really good take.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
you could say
exactly.
that about Joe Burrow or Josh Allen, and I would say the same thing.
Well,
I go back
now
and forth, to be honest with you. It depends on what side of the bed I
fair.
wake up.
Fair, yeah, yeah. We have just had the much far tougher discussion because we're talking about the four best quarterbacks in the AFC. Now we just get to blitzkrieg through the NFC.
Literally, that's exactly what we're going to be doing.
What were your playoff predictions from last week for the NFC?
Yeah. So last week I had Eagles 1, Buccaneers 2, which was the surprise for both of us. Lions 3, 49ers 4, and then I had the Commanders 5, um the Vikings 6, and the Packers 7. So obviously with the
Okay.
Micah Parsons trade, basically I just switched the Packers and the Commanders, I think. Or no, I what I did was I moved the Packers to the 5 seed, put the Commanders at the 6 seed, and the Vikings at the 7 seed.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
basically, I moved the Packers up to the first and then moved the Vikings and the Commanders down.
Gotcha. All right. I had last week the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning the NFC, the Philadelphia Eagles finishing 2, the Green Bay Packers finishing 3, the San Francisco 49ers finishing 4, the Dallas Cowboys at the 5 seed,
Loser.
the Rams at the 6 seed, and the Detroit Lions at the 7 seed. This conference over the last week and a half looks entirely different for me,
True.
except for the top 2 spots. I do still have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Philadelphia Eagles at 2. I have actually no. I'm putting the Green Bay Packers at the 2 seed and the Eagles at the 3 seed.
Oh my gosh. Okay, cool. I
I
love it.
have You'll see why this is tough because it's still the same, but I still have the 49ers at the 4 seed.
Okay.
The wild card is where it gets wacky. I have the Lions at the 5 seed, all the
Okay.
way up from the 7 seed. I am putting the Commanders at the 6 seed, so I'm
Okay.
now putting them in my playoff bracket. And emerging, not out of nowhere, if you've listened to my opinions on them, you may have been able to piece together and sleuth together that I have a sneaky love for this team. But the Arizona Cardinals
Okay.
are
I
the
think that's
7 seed.
reasonable. I think
And
that's
so
reasonable.
I have slowly been sliding on the Rams, and the Cowboys just kind of lost it for me.
Yeah.
It was a gut punch. All of the air came out of my sails. Yeah. And so that's my 7 right there. I'm putting it
Cool.
I'm writing it into stone. The Arizona
Yeah.
Cardinals.
Sounds good, man. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like it's reasonable depending on how far you go. like,
Fair.
like, as long as, and we can right now give your matchup. So the 2 seed you said would be the Packers, the 7 seed would be the Cardinals. Who do you have winning?
I would have the Packers winning that game.
Okay, so then you're still within the realm of reason.
Yeah.
It's like it's the 7 seed, like there are so many teams that could potentially be the 7 seed. That wouldn't shock me.
Yeah.
So my my matchup for the 7 seed, Buccaneers Vikings, I have Buccaneers.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there's something to be said for the fact that the 2 seed has rarely ever, only one time has the 2 seed lost to the 7 seed. Again, I think that the Vikings have a good season. I think that JJ McCarthy is going to be decent, right? I think that their roster is awesome. I'm high on them compared to a lot of people. I think that the Buccaneers are going to be really good. And I
Yeah,
think they're
I
about to
do
make
too.
a run, is what I'll say.
I have the 3-6 matchup of the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Washington Commanders.
Ooh.
And I will pick, because one of these divisional matchups in the playoffs is going to get someone. I
Yeah,
will pick the Commanders in this game.
I love it. I love it.
The Commanders have sneakily resurged for me as well mentally, because I do believe that defense, barring injury, which is beyond anyone's control,
Yeah.
can band together one last time under this current defensive roster, which over the next 2 years is going to heavily evolve. I think
It's
it can pull together one last time to make a presentable NFL defense and put that product out into the field, and that's good enough.
Yeah, it's definitely it's one of those things where it's like when when we gave our biggest fallers and risers and I picked the Commanders, everything and I said this in the episode, my thoughts of the Commanders are simply that the likelihood of them making it back to where they were last season is lower than the other teams that we would consider contenders. One of the reasons why that's the case is because the likelihood that one of their star defensive players is not who they were last year is pretty high compared to other defensive players on other contenders. And so it's not one of those things where I think the Commanders are going to be bad, and I think that their future is great. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the Commanders. So my 3-6 matchup is actually, speaking of the Commanders, Lions Commanders. And this is actually kind of tough for me. I actually am going to pick the Commanders still, even
Okay.
given what I just said. The reason why is because this is where I think, like, and this is kind of let me make this point too to kind of clarify why I still have the Lions winning the NFC North after everything that's transpired. This is where the playoffs are, where I think the turnover of their coaching staff makes the most impact. I think
Okay.
that the Lions are going to be able to, I don't think they're going to be as good as next year. I didn't predict them to, win the conference, or as good as last year. But this is where I think that, obviously it's going to be a big talking point at the beginning of the season. I think that the Lions are really going to be finding their stride, and it's not like people are going to forget that they have such a basically a new coaching staff, but I think that it's just not going to be as big of a talking point because the Lions are still going to be really, really good. They're still going to have a great offense, put a bunch of points on the board. Their defense is going to do good, yada, yada, yada. But I think when we reach the playoffs, we're going to be seeing some things where it's like, whoa. I think that Dan Campbell is going to definitely come under some scrutiny with his play calling, with his decision making, the concept that, and this is something we did talk about when we were talking about the Lions as potential fallers. The concept that Dan Campbell, or that Ben Johnson was basically like holding in and reining in all of Dan Campbell's crazy ideas. Like in terms of not just like the play calling on fourth down, but also just like everything. Like if Dan Campbell without Ben Johnson would just be like taking every risk imaginable within a game, I kind of feel like that might happen to a certain extent given the pressure of it being a playoff game,
Yeah.
right? Like we saw his decision making greatly impact, a playoff run for them, or a playoff run, a Super Bowl run for them. And now without Ben Johnson, I think that those issues and Aaron Glenn are going to be highlighted in the context of the playoffs. And that's why I have the Commanders over the Lions.
My 4-5 matchup is the Lions versus the 49ers. And I don't necessarily disagree with what you said about the Lions, but this is an instance where I think that the 5 seed is better than the 4 seed.
Yeah.
I would pick the Lions against the 49ers.
Yeah. I think that's totally reasonable. In fact, in my 4-5 matchup, I have the 49ers and the Packers. So we just flip flopped Lions, and
Mhm.
I have the Packers winning that one as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. So the divisional round, my 1 seed Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be playing against the Washington Commanders, and in this instance, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers get revenge for last season's playoff game, which people forget was actually a very close game that came down
Very
to a
close.
fourth down conversion by the Commanders to ice it. I will pick the Buccaneers to get revenge. There's not like people know that I've been high on the Buccaneers. I believe in that offense. I think the defense will be competent enough. I just trust Baker Mayfield. I really love the weaponry that they have. They don't have any guy that's top 5 at their position in terms of wide receiver, tight end, or running back, but they all have guys that hover in their, unless you're a Bucky believer. That's what, did you have him at 5? Did you have
No,
him at 5?
well, did I? I actually have to
I
look
think
at
you had him at 6.
I might have had him top 5, but keep going.
I it, but there are guys who, my point was is that there are guys who were knocking on the door of that in some instances because they're at the tail end of their prime or they're about to enter their prime. The Buccaneers take this one.
I did have Bucky Irving at the 5.
There we go.
So anyway, okay, next matchup for me, it's the same matchup, it's just different seeding. I have the 2-6 matchup, which is the Buccaneers versus the Commanders. I'm there with you. I think the Buccaneers are going to win.
Wait, that wouldn't be your 2-6.
What?
It would be Eagles versus what?
Wait, what?
What's your matchup? Why would it be 2-6? Wouldn't it be 1-6? Because why
No,
would the
because I
2
had the
play the
Eagles 1.
6?
Oh. Oh, you're right. Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I did that wrong. So
Okay,
then in
yeah.
that case, I would have Eagles Commanders, and I would pick the Eagles.
So the Eagles Commanders in the 1-6.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and
I
you
just
take
had it
the
wrong in
Eagles.
my bracket. I had them like
Okay.
messed up. But yes, I would take the Eagles over the Commanders. 1 second. Let me look at it just to make sure. Yes, that is right, because I had the Commanders as the 6th seed. And so yeah, they would be playing the Eagles, which would be my 1 seed, and I would pick the Eagles. I think that the for me it really is just like a roster situation. I just think that the Eagles have a better roster. It is a divisional matchup, which, an upset can happen, and so like I think it's reasonable to pick the Commanders, but I do think the Eagles have enough.
The Green Bay Packers, the 2 seed, going against the Detroit Lions. And I will pick yet another divisional third matchup, odd one. Jordan Love, it's a great season. I think he officially stamps himself into like, okay, he's clearly the franchise guy. But those mechanics catch up to him, that poor decision making, that whatever little voice is in the back of his head. Maybe it's Aaron Rodgers' mentorship. Maybe Aaron Rodgers' voice, shrouded robe, is in the back of his head. And he makes a couple costly turnovers, and the Lions win this one.
Okay. Okay. So then my final matchup is Buccaneers Packers. That's the 2 seed and the 5 seed. I have the Buccaneers. I have the Buccaneers winning the divisional round. I think that the Buccaneers as a whole have a more complete roster. I believe in their passing game, and I really believe in their run game. And I think that they're just going to simply kind of bully the Packers a little bit. I think that even with the Micah Parsons trade, I still like the Buccaneers in the trenches as a whole for this matchup, and I think that that's where it's going to be won or lost. And so for that reason, I have the Buccaneers.
Okay. So our AFC Championship games, for me, it's the 1-seeded Buccaneers versus the 5-seeded Lions.
Mm-hmm.
For you?
I have the 2-seeded Buccaneers versus the 1-seeded Eagles.
Mm. You go ahead and give yours. So,
Okay.
Philadelphia hosting Tampa Bay.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I'm a firm believer that when two good teams go against each other twice in a season, most of the time they're going to split. That I personally think that one of the biggest reasons why the Bills have struggled, and again, this is total speculation, but I think that mentally it is a lot harder. It is hard to beat a good team twice when you are
Oh,
both
yeah.
matched evenly. When the Bills beat the Chiefs in the regular season, I'm always like, they don't want to do that because they're going to play in the playoffs, and chances are they're going to lose because it's two good teams that are playing each other. And like, obviously there's more context to that, but I just think that that's how the math works. And most of the time that's how the math becomes reality.
So who do
And
you have in the regular season? I believe
so
week 3.
yeah, I pick the Eagles to be the number 1 seed because they beat the Buccaneers in the regular season. But in the end, I pick the Buccaneers to beat the Eagles and to make it to the Super Bowl. I've been doing a lot of thinking about this particularly, and realizing that this is what it would come down to. And yeah, I'm officially predicting it. I think that the Buccaneers are going to make the Super Bowl.
Okay.
You opened
That's
my
beautiful for
eyes. That
me.
was never something that I considered until last episode. And then you kind of walked me through it, and I was like, oh, I guess if they're in that position, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
It's a fun
So
prediction.
it is a fun prediction. Up until about 3 days ago, give or take, I was lockstep with you.
Okay.
I was all in on the Buccaneers. And then I thought, well, I have the Ravens making the Super Bowl as the 1 seed. So I have plaguing me the concept of 2 1 seeds making the Super Bowl. It's tough. It's hard for me to predict. But I do really like the Ravens, and I do really think this could be a Lamar Jackson finally gets over the hump year. I was then thinking about, when was the last time that a wild card team made a Super Bowl run? It's been a long time, especially from the NFC. It's been Joe Burrow the last time that it happened with back, whoa, goodness, I'm going to feel old in 2021, 4 years ago now. Were
They
you
weren't
not?
a wild card. No, we won the division that year.
Oh, that's right. You did win the division. So yes, it's been much longer.
Yeah.
I have the Lions beating the Buccaneers and making the Super Bowl. Here's why. And I feel terrible doing it because it feels like a betrayal of my Buccaneers love. But there have been things that have been sticking in my mind. The first of which is,
Oh, do you want to know something interesting? You want to know the last
what?
time it happened? In 2020, when the Buccaneers went to the Super Bowl as the 5
Oh,
seed.
yes. Yes. That's right. The Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for reminding me.
You're welcome.
Um, you do not need elite quarterback play to win the NFC.
Yeah.
That is an objective fact that the last kind of decade has proven, just compared to the conferences. I am sneakily back in on the Lions defense.
Okay.
And the Lions weaponry does, just as much as I hyped up the Buccaneers weaponry,
Dude,
it
it
still kind of
clears.
blows
It
them out of the water.
clears. Yeah.
I think that Dan Campbell establishes himself
Mm-hmm.
as definitively a Mount Rushmore head coach.
Yeah. I like it.
I think he retools that coaching staff in his own image. And yeah, it is Dan Campbell to the core. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes Dan Campbell can do some goofy, silly things. But when you're Dan Campbell and you have a roster like this, I'm going to go against my conventional wisdom of distrusting small-handed Jared Goff. But he does it.
It's just so funny because like you picked the Lions as your biggest follower, and you were consistently hating on Jared Goff. And we come to this prediction, and you predict the Lions to make the Super Bowl.
Because I realized that there had to be a blind spot. I was
things can
searching
change.
because here's the thing. I've been high on my own supply. This NFL offseason, I've started a podcast. I know what I'm talking about. I've been watching the NFL all my life. I know ball. And I've been so hot on this Lions are fallers, the coaching staff. I'm not in on Jared Goff. And yet, that is where my blind spot was. And the Lions prove me wrong by proving me right in this prediction.
What you're doing here is you're covering yourself so that if they do fall, you could be like, look at that episode where I predicted the Lions as the biggest fallers. But if they make the Super Bowl, you're like, well, that was my prediction all along. You're right now
Galaxy
you're
brain
covering
stuff
your
here.
butt. Where
Galaxy brain
my
stuff here.
my predictions are totally in line with everything that I've said. But I digress. But that's okay, Jonathan. We can do whatever we want. It's our podcast.
Super Bowl winners, Adam.
Yeah, I have the Bills winning.
You have the Bills beating the Buccaneers.
I think it's a close game. I think that um, this incredible storyline of the Buccaneers, no one expects it, right? Making this playoff run, getting to the Super Bowl. I think that the Bills, and this is one of those situations where, again, and I've said this multiple times on this episode, I don't think that winning is a quarterback stat. I do think that when it is a close game, having a better quarterback is vital to winning 90% of the time. And so I think it's going to be a close game, and I think that Josh Allen is better than Baker Mayfield. I think that they're going to win.
So the ultimate thing that this comes down to, because just to be anticlimactic, the Ravens in this hypothetical world I've created, I think wiped the floor with the Lions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think what we have both, if we're looking at this purely at a 5,000-foot view, you and I both view this as a season that one of the non-Mahomes big four gets over the hump.
Yeah.
Like when we're in the off season of next year, regardless of all of our specific predictions that we made that will inevitably be proven wrong, our big picture takeaways is that we both think it's just two different guys, I with Lamar, you with Josh Allen, think that one of those guys is finally going to get out of the AFC and just kind of show, like we are capable, we are elite tier 1 quarterbacks. Get that first Lombardi, stamp yourself as a Hall of Famer, and get it over with.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing, and that's like, I guess you could say that that's our big takeaway for the AFC. Our big takeaway for the NFC is simply the amount of parity that exists within that conference. That if the Eagles win next year, I wouldn't be shocked. If the Lions win, wouldn't particularly be shocked. If the Commanders win, wouldn't be shocked. I already talked about how if the Packers win, I wouldn't be entirely shocked. Like, there's a long list of teams that I'm like, yeah, like they could do it.
Yeah, and for me, it's and the AFC for me, it's obviously it's Chiefs and Ravens. For you, it's Chiefs and Bills. I just don't have the beliefs where if the Bills run into the Chiefs, it is what it is. Fate has determined that it will never occur. But like that is what it is. It's just such a smaller group of teams.
Yeah. And of course, again, I just got to say that out there for anyone listening. I am a supporter of the Bengals. I love the Bengals. I followed them all my life through thick and thin. I would not be shocked if the Bengals win the Super Bowl this year. And I think that that is a reasonable take because I truly believe that if Joe Burrow and company make it to the playoffs, they have that chance. They always have a good chance, in fact. But for the sake of this episode, and I'm talking here to my family and my friends who are Bengals fans, I'm not betraying them. I'm just saying for this episode, looking at what I've established already, this is what I'm predicting. Because I think that this is one fun, and because I think that this is just kind of again shows a more broader point about the parity even within the AFC. And I think that that's really the big theme here is that basically when we're saying that there are other quarterbacks that could potentially make it to the Super Bowl outside of Patrick Mahomes, really what we're saying is that the whole league, I think, is a lot closer than it has been in previous years.
Yes. As a message to Chiefs Kingdom and my family and friends, there's an unspoken bond here, and you all know what I'm doing by making this pick. We all know what's actually going to happen. So You guys know what I'm doing here. We're playing the game. We're playing the NFL. There's so much parity. It's really close. There are a lot of elite quarterbacks and great teams.
You just went into
So
like a Donald Trump cadence. You know what I'm
and
doing.
so frankly, you know what I'm doing. We all know what's going to happen at the end of the day. But yeah, so my official prediction is Baltimore versus Detroit. Baltimore winning the Super Bowl, which, you know, it's my prediction. It's what will probably happen because I'm gonna be right. But also, you know,
Well, this is going to be a little bit shorter of an episode. We don't have any games planned. But Jonathan, who's a player whose highlights they should watch?
um, I'm going to say that you should go watch Bucky Irving highlights.
Heck
According
yeah,
to
dude.
Adam, he's a top 5 running back. Go watch Bucky
You'll
Irvin
see. You'll see.
swing the rock.
Exactly. Um, if you enjoyed this episode, if you think we're incredibly right and the smartest NFL commentators you've ever heard, make sure to tell us in the
Or
comments.
if
If
you
you think
think
we're
that we're
idiots and we have
idiots,
no clue what we're talking about, make sure to tell us in the comments. We love to hear it. We'll respond back and tell you why you're stupid or why you're smart. Thanks for watching. Give us a follow, give us a like, all of the things, and we will see you next time.